Right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Arushi, the founder's office at RevRag, and your host for today's session. So, the topic that we'll be discussing today is, of course, voice AI, but in lending. And we'll be narrowing down with business loan conversions. So, today we'll be bringing in two perspectives. Joining us today are two guests. First up is Prashant, VP of Product and Growth at Open Financial Technologies. Prashant brings in decades of experience across SaaS, neobanking, and financial services, building products from scratch. Thank you for joining us, Prashant.
Thank you, Arushi.
And then we have Neeraj, our co founder and CPO at RevRag. He will also be sharing his inputs on the financial product that is in topic today, business loans, and how we are building it with AI voice at RevRag. Now, Prashant has seen the full arc, building products like invoice discounting, BNPL, supply chains financing, and setting up the distribution for these products across companies. But even with this huge portfolio, we specifically want to narrow down on business loans today and what it really takes to onboard SMEs in India. And just to add a fun connection here, a few weeks back, we actually started doing a POC with Open Financial Technologies. So, this conversation is not just theory. We've seen the pain points on the ground, and we are here to share all the learnings and, probably provoke new thinking. So, with that, I think we can start with the webinar. So, Prashant, let's start from the beginning. You've built a range of SME products. How has the journey been, from a whiteboard to scaling it across companies, right from the start and, until where you are at Open Financial Technologies right now?
Yeah, so journey started almost 10 years back. We've started way back in 2015 when I joined
Mm-hmm.
it, and a lot of things have changed in the SME lending ecosystem in the last 10 years. I remember during those days we were just trying to solve a basic problems, what is required to, let's say, build an SME lending product. Versus, let's say, 10 years today, we are solving a deeper problem in terms of how can we scale the business. So, for example, in 2015, we were just trying to solve how do we build distribution for SME lending, what product we need to build it, how do we underwrite for SMEs. Even these basic building blocks were not there, and we were thinking from the first principles. Whereas today, I think all of these three problems I think have been addressed up to some extent. Now we are going deeper in the problem statement and trying to figure out how can we improve funnel, how can we improve our PNL, how can we improve sales efficiency, so on and so forth. So I think in the last 10 years, there have been a lot of technological advancement, which has helped taking a loan from SME is very simple and easy.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I think if I have to summarize last 10 years, I think it's been an incredible from an SME lending perspective. 10 years back, it was super difficult for an SME to take a loan. They can't think of taking an unsecured loan digitally. Today, it's a click of a button, and within 24 hours, they can get a loan in their bank account, right? If I have to go a little bit more specific, I remember in 2015 we used to do bank statement analysis manually. There used to be we used to put a person, and then the person used to do manually and add what is the credit, what is the debit, and then underwriting team used to use that information to give a loan. Similarly, I remember in 2015 or 2016, I myself have visited a lot of customers with a 30-page loan agreement where customer needs to sign manually, and then we'll come back, and then the QC will do, and then the disbursement will happen. But today, all of this happens digitally, right? Same goes with the underwriting. Underwriting methods were traditional. Today, a lot of innovation has happened on the underwriting space as well. So I think in the last 10 years, SME lending ecosystem has evolved significantly, not only from, let's say, from a distribution, from a product, and as well as from the underwriting perspective.
Right. And, I'm sure a lot of things might have changed during, before and after COVID. So,
Yeah.
one thing that I want to ask is how has the customer acquisition changed over these years, and also how uh, COVID had an impact on this part, especially for small businesses?
Yeah. So again, if I go back 10 years, at that point of time, most of these loans, if an SME want, either they will go to the bank branch or a bank RMs will visit them and will try to, let's say, convince for a loan. But in last 10 years, even the customer acquisition has changed significantly. Uh, we have seen a lot of work has been done on the digital acquisition where we have improved our lending journeys, onboarding processes, so on and so forth. Plus, there is a lot of evolved partnership model has also come up. So, for example, let's say if a lender wants to give a loan to a restaurant, today they can go and partner with Zomato and Swiggy, can get data from them, use that distribution network to, let's say, to reach out to the restaurant, use their data to, let's say, underwrite, and eventually give them a loan. They don't need to, let's say, deploy a lot of sales folks on the feet on street. So I think the partnership model has evolved significantly. uh, Fundamentally, what is this partnership model is doing is building a trust amongst SMEs, right? If we go back 10 years back, bank RMs used to come and visit, or an SME used to visit bank branch. There used to be some trust factor there, right? Either they know that bank RM or they have a relationship with that bank. Today, those trust is getting bridged through these partnership. For example, restaurant has been working with Zomato for, let's say, last 2 to 3 years. There is some trust in the Zomato platform, and if Zomato, let's say, start offering a loan through some NBFC partner or a bank partner, customer would be willing to, let's say apply for a loan. So I think partnership model has evolved significantly, not only from a distribution standpoint, but also from an underwriting perspective. So there is definitely, I think, that one particular segment has evolved. The second is also there is a lot of contextual lending started happening. What do I mean by contextual lending is, again, the same example. There is a Zomato, there is a restaurant. Zomato has a one more vertical called, let's say, Hyperpure. Through Hyperpure, they distribute goods to the restaurant. Now, to buy that particular goods, again, they can avail a line of credit, right? So, a lot of these cash flow based lending has started happening where lender will again go to these B2B marketplaces, will give line of credit to their borrowers to, let's say, buy products from them, right? So that is again more of a product innovation which has led to a better distribution, a better cap in terms of acquiring customers. Now, specifically post COVID, we have seen more and more digital penetration, where SME lenders are able to acquire customer digitally through their marketing campaigns. But still, there are certain pockets, tier 2, tier 3 towns, where we do see that customers are not very comfortable digitally, and that's where I think we have to still put effort. How do we make those digital funnel much more effective from an acquisition standpoint? So yeah.
Got it, got it. That was quite an in-depth analysis of how things were, around COVID. Now let's jump onto Neeraj for a question. Neeraj, you've seen SME lenders from a product side as well, right? What do you think founders miss? Some things that they miss while building for this segment, especially in onboarding flows.
So obviously, as Prashant mentioned, right, like this, industry has evolved a lot in past 10 years, right? And very fairly mentioned by Prashant that like how these loans were dispersed or the processed back in 2015 versus 2025, right? But I still feel that like there is a lot to do on that part as well. So, for example, in the current, SME lenders, with the current SME lenders, what I feel is they are still somehow, designing the whole application or the experience according to the tier one users, right? Which they think that like obviously tier one SME lenders, SME users are tech savvy, but just think of a SME user sitting in Sitapur or Lakhimpur, right? Tier two or tier three, right? They may not be very tech savvy, right? And obviously one of the important factor in the whole SME lending is the trust, right? So for example, if somebody is running a small unit in Sitapur, right, they need a person who to whom with whom they can trust. Obviously they need the money, right, to expand the business. So I think there are a couple of things on which what I have seen the product people or basically these businesses can thrive on. So for example, one is the user context, right? So for example, SMEs need guidance, right? And not simply, let's say, the forms or the simple information. So for example, here AI voice agents can come and say that like why GST is needed, just by simply saying that like GST, because unless you explain them, right, okay, because of the so and so reason we need the GST, right? On the same line, so for example, whenever in a typical lending journey, be it B2C or B2C, B2B or B2C, where do we see the higher drop offs? It is mainly at the points where user gets confused. So for example, if user reads APR, right, and let's say they don't understand the APR, right, so they get drop off, right? So somewhere they need an assistant, right? Okay, APR is nothing but the combined charges, right, over the period of year, right, whatever you will pay, right? Just like a 5-year kid, if you can explain, right? So, and third thing is, just like I mentioned on the first point itself, right, the trust. So I think one thing is that like the complete so these AI voice agents which have been running, especially for the lending ecosystem, right, I believe they will act as a thread between the digital and the physical world, right? So for example, a lot of SME lenders, they have their physical presence in tier 2 and tier 3, and that develops eventually the trust, right? So I think there they can optimize a lot of cost, right? Because a lot of doubts and everything will be cleared by these AI voice agents itself, right? So I think in totality, Arushi, we are moving towards that, but at the same time, if these SME lenders become more inclusive towards tier 3 and tier 4, let's say SME businesses, right? And maybe one of the solutions they can include is the AI voice agents. I think it will be awesome, right, for both the parties, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Neeraj. And we will be talking more on tier 2, tier 3 cities in the following questions. So now, we've gone with the overview. I think we can start with uh, narrowing down to business loans. So, Prashant, since you build, products in different areas, supply chain, invoice discounting, uh, but specifically in business loans, can you walk us through the business loan funnel a bit in detail? And then we can talk where the drop-offs mostly happen.
Yeah. So let's say if I have to talk about the complete funnel of, let's say, a business loan, we can largely divide that funnel into, let's say, broadly four stages. The first one is more on lead generation. The second is, let's say, collecting all the information and collecting all the documents which is required for an underwriting. Third is largely underwriting, where, let's say, who to give a loan, how much to give a loan. And the fourth is, let's say, once the loan has been sanctioned, you complete all the documents process and eventually disburse the loan. So right. So largely these are the four stages of a let's say of a business loan. Now, quickly, if I have to talk about the lead generation piece, right? So this is where, let's say, a lot of distribution innovation is happening. But if you look at the distribution, would be largely two types. One, either it could be a partnership led, or either it could be, let's say, in-house marketing led, right? So these are largely two channels. And typically, let's say a company like ours or an NBFCs would always keep P&L in mind and will keep, let's say, optimizing the CAC. Let's say how much they are spending to generate a lead. And typically the way they look at CAC is, let's say, for a cohort of leads, how much they are spending and how much they are able to generate money. Now, the generation of money depends upon the overall funnel performance. Right. So there is always, so for example, let's say in our case, there is always a battle is how much, let's say, do we spend on the marketing, how much we will be able to, let's say, generate revenue. Is always a function of the subsequent stages which I'll talk about. But I think so that's one. And that the lead generation is a very key important function in terms of how does the overall funnel works. Now the second, which is the more important, is a document collection. What I have seen in the last 10 years, this is the stage where most of the NBFCs, the lenders, and the banks or marketplaces struggle. Because today, even after 10 years, this is a slightly human intensive or a sales intensive funnel. And as soon as you put a sales intensive or a sales human, it requires a lot of management and figure out, let's say, which lead should get assigned to which salesperson, what do they should do, what time should we call. So all of those starts getting into picture when it comes to driving conversions. And I've seen most of the NBFCs and the banks struggle in this. uh, you will see a lot of these NBFCs will have a large call centers. Now managing these call centers is a humongous task. And typically we have seen most of the drop off is happening in that particular stage. Of course, there is a lot of product innovation has happened and onboarding has been streamlined, but still, as Neeraj also mentioned, there is some sort of a hand holding required to an SME. So someone needs to call. So right, so I think so. This is the biggest in my mind is a funnel stage which, let's say, needs to be improved now. And if this can be improved, a lot of people, a lot of NBFCs can scale their business significantly. So that's second. Third is underwriting. This is more or less sorted, but still, what we have seen is the sales and the underwriters coordinate with each other to reach out to the customer. And again, there is so much inefficiency there. Let's say, when do they reach out to the customer? Sales will coordinate with the customer, and then they will ask for a time, and then the underwriter will call and do the whatever the required physical discussion to, let's say, approve amount. This stage still, I think, still sorted, but of course there's a scope of improvement in terms of efficiencies of underwriter. And the last is more of documentation, sanction, and disbursement. Progress in terms of through the technology innovation, where now the digital signature has been able to, let's say, make the whole process much faster and simpler. So let's say if I have to give you a number, let's say if there is 100 leads on top of the funnel today, roughly we called 30 customers depending upon our internal model. Out of 30, 30% of those we are able to collect documents, which make it to 9, and roughly 10% we are able to approve. So out of 100% leads, we are able to, let's say, approve 1% leads. So that's how the funnel looks like. And most of the jump in the value is that how many customer we should call and how many documents we are able to, let's say collect. I think these are two high impact line item. If we are able to improve, our overall funnel will look much better. And I think that's where I feel very strongly that AI voice agent with some context can improve this funnel significantly. uh, yeah.
Got it, got it. Prashant, last to last week we had a webinar where we discussed KYC in depth, and in that we like understood uh, how big the problem is even in KYC. Guiding the customers, they get confused, especially where language is a barrier.
Yeah.
So any points that you would want to give in that area? I mean, there are so many places in KYC where,
Yeah.
if there
Yeah.
is an AI agent, voice agent that could guide you, I'm sure a lot could change there.
Yeah. So, for example, let's say there is a very basic problem statement in KYC, right? In SME, you will find there are 3 to 4 different type of company structure. There is someone called proprietorship, then there is a partnership, then there is a private limited. Now, let's say if a partnership firm applies, from a KYC perspective, it's just not a director's KYC, then you will need to do a company KYC as well. Now, generally, even SMEs will not be aware, okay, what all documents do I need to submit? And even in private limited, it becomes more complicated. So even SMEs are not aware about what documents do I need to submit, and that's where they need some help. Let's say maybe from a human that, or maybe let's say if we can replace with that AI, that what all documents do I need to submit, what all documents is required for me to get a loan approval, right? So that's a very basic problem in order to, let's say, even collect KYC documents. And even after that, sometimes what we've also seen is the address are not updated properly, so they're not even aware what all the documents are required to let's say get a loan. So yeah.
Got it. Awesome. And one question which might be a little different is how much of this is a product problem versus a distribution problem?
I think it's a mix of both. Uh, I think in last 10 years there have been a lot of product intervention has happened, but uh, as Neeraj also mentioned, there is some sort of an assistance customer still looking for. They're still looking for someone whom they can talk, get comfort, and then apply it digitally. Uh, I fundamentally believe that in the lending or in the onboarding journey, if we can enable some sort of a real time AI calling agent, right? Let's say if a customer is, let's say, from a tier 2 tier 3 town is filling, and he can speak to someone, ki, what do I need to fill in this particular box? I think it will become super easy. So from a product perspective, I think we've not been able to solve completely, largely because the way SMEs behave. They still need some sort of an assistant. They still need to speak to someone to, let's say, fill the application. So of course we need to still solve product, as well as, of course, there's a distribution problem statement also exists. I think we've been able to reach out to tier 1 towns, but still tier 2 tier 3 towns we have not been able to reach out. People are still not comfortable applying digitally. They're still scared that if they click on digitally somewhere, their money will get deducted from their bank account. So still a distribution, and it's a mix of both. And I think I fundamentally believe that, I think with AI, I think we can solve and we can fill the gaps which exist in product as well as distribution, which will make easier for an SMEs to, let's say, apply for a loan and get a loan easily.
Great, great. Now, since we are talking about, the penetration in tier two, tier three cities, since you've, worked a lot in that space, um,
Yeah.
how, I mean, has there been any improvement in these cities, and, and how has the borrower expectation changed over these years in these cities? How the behaviors differ in these cities? If you could give some examples or some experiences around
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So, of course, there is definitely an improvement in terms of penetration to these tier 2, tier 3 towns, but I think still there is a long way to go. Even in our business, if you look at funnel for a tier 1 towns, or let's say tier 2, tier 3 towns, we see a significant delta. Tier 1 town funnels behave much better in terms of document fulfillment as compared to tier 2, tier 3 towns. I think couple of challenges. The first is definitely a language barrier, right? Sometimes when we go tier 2, tier 3 towns, either in north or south, they are very much comfortable in their regional languages. They might not be that comfortable with, let's say, Hindi or English. So, for example, in south, they will either be preferring in, let's say, in Tamil or a Telugu, right? So, and it becomes a very huge barrier. Let's say, how do we let's say even communicate with them? I think so. That's language barrier is definitely one significantly which we see in tier 2 tier 3 town. The second is I think still they need that assistance, because I think maybe in their area they either trust someone, let's say CA, or maybe there is a local DSA. They still need that person whom they can speak and can discuss that what is their requirement, what sort of a loan they are looking for, what is the ROI they are comfortable with. So I think they still need to speak to someone. Generally, what we have seen is they ended up preferring someone who's local from those towns, who can speak their language. But still, I think that those are the problems I think we need to solve. One is language barrier, and then how can we, let's say, assist them to complete loan journey, and as well as guide them throughout the loan application.
Got it, got it. Um, we are talking a lot about, digital journeys. Do you think will, like, there's a mix of physical and digital in a journey, right? Will the digital part ever have a bigger proportion, or will the physical part have a bigger portion in the coming years, now that we are advancing more with AI agents and, digital ways? And but I mean, the trust factor, the, emotional part, that has to come through a human, right? So what are your thoughts on this in
I
the coming
think,
years?
yeah. So I think at least for the next 10 years, there will be some sort of a digital and let's say an assistance model will be there, specifically, let's say, in tier 2 tier 3 towns, and which will eventually, let's say, push overall digital adoption. But now, as AI coming into the picture, we can address a lot of those physical touch, or a touch point with the customer. So I am a firm believer that, specifically, again, if I talk about SME loans, there will always be a digital plus some sort of a physical human slash AI touch will be required, and I think AI fills that gap beautifully. And when I talk about these physical touch or a customer touch point, these are very specific touch points, right? You don't need a very high skill set human to, let's say, talk about those problem statement. We can train AI and can specifically talk about those problem statement and give comfort to the customer. So there will always be, at least for the next 10-15 years, there will be some sort of digital adoption will definitely increase, but there will be some sort of human touch will be required, which will overall improve the, let's say, the funnel conversions for these SME lenders.
Great, great. Okay, that's awesome. Um, One question that I want to ask is if, I mean, there are so many fintechs and neobanks coming into the markets. Are there any major or maybe, some mistakes that, are not noticed that much that they make, or, some mistakes that people entering into these markets are making, which can be avoided now? If you can throw some light on that.
Yeah, I think the one key point which I generally ended up noticing here is, because we all live in tier one towns, we ended up assuming that if we build a good digital journey, customer will come and will fill everything. And with that assumption, they ended up building those journeys and then eventually start figuring out business around those theses. But as soon as you go beyond the tier one towns, these funnels look drastically different. uh, and customers are still not comfortable, let's say, applying digitally. So I think that difference I still see, where people, because in the B2C ecosystem, I think there is still a lot more digital adoption and penetration. In the SME ecosystem, when we go tier 2 tier 3 town, there is still some hesitance when it comes to applying for a loan, and most of the product builders end up optimizing for tier 1 towns, and those kind of journeys and those kind of experience do not work that effectively in, let's say, in tier 2 and tier 3 towns. And now, because of the AI evolution, I think with the AI use cases and whatever the product which we have built, I think we would be able to build much more product for those tier 2 tier 3 towns, where there is some sort of an assistance through AI. So yeah.
All right. Okay. Um, so now let's jump onto the highlight of the webinar. So Neeraj, I have a question for you. Let's talk about the POC that we started with Open Financial Technologies. Can you tell us some areas where you saw some existing inefficiencies, and what were the changes after the POC was done? Maybe we can start from the beginning and how uh, what points we worked on, how the improvements were, and so on.
Yeah, awesome. So I think it's a good question. So since Prashant is also here, so Open Capital was one of the first client we onboarded, right? While solving the business loans, right? So coming from the lending background, I was also very much interested to solve this use case. And as we discussed, right, that uh, there has been lot of speculation that since the journey is not completely 100% digital, right? So there is a lot to basically add value in those funnels, right, from the AI perspective, right? So I think I can so once so obviously, so as our process is there, right? So we understand the use case, right, of the POC, and then we start building the agent, and then we test the agent on a small set of users, and then we gradually increase the volume. And the same happened with Open Capital as well, right? And and with us, right, one of the important factors of the like if the POC will become success or not is also a function of how uh, quick the client is in giving the feedback and taking care of the whole POC as well, right? So we are anyways there, right? But unless until we get the feedback, it directs the whole POC. So I think Open Capital's team was pretty much very quick on giving the feedback and taking the whole thing to the POC. So they were pretty much instrumental, I would say, right? So that was part one. And I think when we started running the POC on the sample data, right? So obviously, success didn't come in one go, right? So we expect that there would be couple of iterations, right? But there were not much iterations. So I think in second or the third iteration itself, And after each iteration, obviously we hear those call recordings and we see the data. So whatever the call recordings are there, we also get the transcript. And LLMs are really powerful in taking out the certain information. So currently one of the challenges in the whole lending ecosystem is there that whatever the calls are done, right? So there is no feedback loop of the information going from operations to, let's say, product or the business. So for example, if I'm sitting today and I want to understand, hey, today my operations is doing call to, let's say, 10,000 users today, right? What these users are saying as of today, what is the distribution, right? So obviously I can go to my ops head and I can ask that, like, hey, what is the sentiment today, or like how are the customers behaving lately, right? But if I want to understand from the quantitative perspective, there is no way, right? Obviously in past, right, people have tried NLP techniques and those things, right? But those were not scalable per se, right? But after the LMs have come in, right, and they become very cheap, right? So this problem has solved. Now you can actually come to know that, like, what these customers are actually talking about, and you can know at scale, right? Okay, I have pushed these 10,000 users. What are the percentage of the users are saying they don't have, for example, the GST document, right? Or they are comfortable with certain license or not, right? Something like that. So yeah, one of the outcomes which we very quickly saw was the a reduction of the TAT on the when we did the open capital experiment, right? So one of the things earlier was that the TAT to collect the document was around 7 to 8 days, and I think that has decreased to 4 to 5 days, right? So the fundamental hypothesis there is that, like, one of the properties of AI agents is obviously it can do relentless follow-ups, right? And the day on which lender has got the lead, right? So obviously it can act very fast to start calling these leads and follow till, and obviously that follow up has to be in a right balanced way, right? So we don't have to irritate them, right, for that matter. So one of the hypotheses which we think that, like, how why it reduced the TAT was because when actual agent, so we qualified the customer for the open capital and we gave it to the open capital team, and then they made the call, right? So there the customer already had the context, right? Like, hey, I already had the conversation with the AI agent, right? And I already understood that, like, okay, ABCD documents is needed, four documents are already ready, and fifth one is with my CA, let me just figure it out, right? I already know the stuff, right? So that way I think that has improved a lot, right? And then again, the feedback coming from these calls, right, has also been very helpful, right? So when we see the quantitative aspect, and as the volume increases, we will be able to establish statistical significance as well around these hypotheses as well, right? So for example, on a monthly basis, we can see that, like, okay, whatever users we have pushed through these callings, right? uh, what actually these users are saying, why they are not moving forward, right? They are having good conversation of 4 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they're spending time, they're explaining their businesses and so on and so forth, right? But and they seem to be very genuine businesses as well, right? Then what is actually what is actually the blocker, right, if we want to see from the quantitative perspective? Then obviously one of the important things which we have seen is that, like, with the open capital is that the the complete loop of lead coming in and we giving the feedback, right? Or basically the outcome that, like, who are exactly the leads to whom with whom you need to connect, right? So that loop has been established now, right, very efficiently, right? Every day we pass on these leads, and very soon we will be transitioning to real time as well as we will have the CRM integrations, right? So obviously before in during the POC we try to provide any type of deeper integrations per se, right? Because of the obvious reasons, once the production starts we tend to go towards the deeper integration, right? So obviously more value will come out from these deeper integration, and eventually I think in the coming months, maybe down the line 4 to 6 months, very soon whatever the signals we are getting from these transcripts, right, they should be able to add some value, some status, some significant value to your underwriting as well, right? Because it matters a lot, I believe that, like, whenever so when a human basically talks to a customer, right, and they ask that, like, hey, what kind of business you do, or they ask some critical information, how much revenue do you make, for example, right? and if sometimes customers may cook up the information. Yeah, right. So human agents can identify ki, hey, this guy might be cooking up the information, so let me double check this information with bank statement or something, right? If that is not in the rule, right? So these sort of signals will also start coming in. So I personally believe, having worked in underwriting, that like it has lot of scope to add a lot of value in underwriting as well, right? So yeah.
Yeah,
That
and I
was,
think
yeah,
just to add what Neeraj shared, right? From purely from our business perspective, there is definitely two line items where we see the improvement. And when I say improvement, significant improvement, I think the one is around sales efficiency, right? Today, let's say before FREG, let's say if they used to submit 5 documents to the credit for underwriting, with the help of, let's say, RevRec, let's say where they've done the lead qualification, today we see 50-60% jump in the daily productivity. Right now, they are able to, let's say, submit 8. Right, so I'm already, let's say, seeing that 50% jump in the sales productivity. That's first. Second, in scale plan, lending companies, specifically in SMEs, are always dependent on let's say hiring sales force, right? We need to keep hiring more and more sales people if we have to keep increasing our disbursement scale. And because of that scaling process always becomes slow. You need to hire right people, then you need to train them, and then they start performing. Will have a gestation period of, let's say, 1 to 2 months. Now with the AI agent which they are able to perform, I don't need that, let's say, I'm not dependent on human anymore. The AI agent, let's say, can do lead qualification for me today. I don't, let's say, if I need to reach 10,000 user this month, I can do it. If I need to reach out to 20,000 user next month, that also I can do it without deploying humans. So I think the scaling becomes super easy, and I think we are seeing that early traction, that I don't need to deploy so many people. And let's say if this month my plan is to reach out to these customers, and suddenly next month I want to double it, it's doable with very, let's say, limited investment. I don't need to, let's say, train, hire, and do all of that. So definitely there are early signs, and I'm very bullish and confident that these numbers will look more healthier, and will become much better. I think as we work closely and deliver more value.
that is great to hear, Prashant, Neeraj. Um, so I wanted to touch on the topic wherein we spoke about, AI agents, but Prashant, you've already expressed your views there on how, AI voice agents can contribute to this business loan journey in SMEs and in tier three, tier two towns. Just want to ask one thing. If, let's say there's a BL journey where there's no AI implementation, AI workflow yet, if you had to deploy AI agents for this funnel, where would you start? What would be your first point where you could, implement some AI solution or probably AI voice specifically?
Yeah. So the way I look at, let's say, if you go deep in the journey, and think from a first principle, there are very small steps which are broken today. And if you start attacking those small problem statements, I think that can impact on the funnel significantly. For example, let's say today I will first deploy on lead qualification, right? There is some sort of a human and the sales skills required in terms of to close a loan, but let's say, can I do a lead qualification? Let's say on top of the funnel, if I get 1,000 leads, can I figure out of 1,000 leads, how many leads are high quality, high intent, right? So if out of 1,000, if I can figure out 200, and that's those 200, I can put my, let's say, great salesperson who can quickly close all those 200 within a certain time, and then that drives, let's say, overall more value for me, right? So I think the lead qualification definitely becomes, let's say, the lowest hanging fruit,
Hmm.
where these agents are able to, let's say, do a lead qualification at scale. Now, of course, you can define what does lead qualification mean, intent, and what document collection, all of that. But lead qualification is definitely a low-hanging fruit. How can you solve that? After lead qualification, let's say as we evolve, can these agents also collect documents, right? Where all of that CRM integration can also make sense. Where what time to call, when the customer is available. Can I make a call then and there? And let's say push them, or let's say excite them to submit documents on time, right? So I think the document collection is let's say is the next piece, let's say, I will attack. The third piece is also, let's say, on the, again I'll go back on top of the funnel. That's in my priority. That would be the third problem statement where, let's say, customer is applying online. He has come on our landing page. Can I give him the option to speak to someone, which could be an AI agent, and he can guide them what to fill in what box at then and there, which will help me, let's say, push these customers to fill all the details in one go. Right? That could be, let's say, a third problem statement where, in our website itself we put an agent, and when, let's say, someone from tier 2 or tier 3 town is filling the application and he needs some assistance, he can just click of a button somewhere, and then the real time calls goes, and the person is telling them that, pan pay, you fill your 10 digit pan number here, you put Aadhaar number here, you put other address, all of that, right? So that would be, let's say, in my mind, could be a third problem statement. And I think overall, I think at the strategic level, as I think Neeraj also mentioned, is how do you build a complete CRM for one particular use case, not only on the calling, but also the complete workflow will have significant impact on the business as well as on the P&L. So yeah, so that's how I look at it from an AI perspective, specifically for the, let's say, the SME lending space.
Oh, thanks for the thorough answer, Prashant. Uh, Neeraj, I have one question for you. Since we have almost come to the closing of the webinar, um, because of course you worked in this area. Specifically for business loans, what do you think, are some areas that you at RevRag would want to work more on in the BL funnel, areas where there is still scope for improvement and where, you could potentially fill in if you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think nuances. I think Prashant is well versed, like how what all things can be done, right? And he has covered in great length as well. But if I have to cover from 30,000 feet perspective, I think one thing is for sure that, like, from the business loan perspective, we are very bullish, right? As a AI voice agent company, we are very bullish on business loan company, and it is one of our darling use cases, right? That is one, and we would like to expand more on that, right? So that is one thing. And second thing is, here the dynamics is such that, like, one of the important factors is trust, right? Between the lender and the SME owner, right? So obviously, a lot of efforts are being made, you can say, from the digital building digital product perspective, right? Be it like maybe today, let's say 70% of the journey is happening over the product and 30% is happening physically, or whatever it is, right? So I think our whole intention here would be, if this gap could be bridged using the AI voice agents, right? That would be great. So, like, in my previous answers, I was saying that, like, be it any uh, business loan lender, right? There is always a physical element involved, right? And that physical element costs a lot, right? From the processing point of view, right? So I fundamentally believe that, like, and that we are currently taking it as a hypothesis and have been basically testing it with other clients as well, right? Let's say if this cost is digital plus physical, this cost is, let's say, X, right? Can this cost become, let's say, X by 2 or X by 3, right? So that is where we are coming from, and that is our thought process. And considering that only, we are pushing ourselves to, double down how we can add more value to the whole ecosystem of SME lenders, right? So yeah.
Great, great, Neeraj. Thanks for the answer. Um, I think we've pretty much covered all the points in depth, and it was an amazing session with you both. Thank you so much, Prashant, for sharing your experience so openly and in depth. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks, Neeraj, for showing us how you think and how RevRag thinks differently. To everybody who is watching this episode, if you want to explore more around voice agents or onboarding challenges in fintech, BFSI and insurance, keep watching our next episodes. Drop us a line. You can check us out. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Take care. See you in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arushi.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Neeraj.